Comic Book Savant, episode 447. Welcome back to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. This episode, we're going to be doing a TV talk episode, and I'm going to be doing a review for Jessica Jones Season 3. I know I haven't done a lot of TV talk episodes recently. I saw that they weren't getting a ton of traction. I kind of did a few over on YouTube, and I just kind of slowed down doing them. But I thought it was only proper that I finished out the Marvel Netflix run of shows, because I did reviews for all of those previously through the channel. So since we know they've all got canceled, we've had major announcements of all the new upcoming Disney Plus Marvel shows that's going to be coming out in the future. I thought it was only right, like I said, to finish it out proper and do the last review for the last season. But before I get into all that, I want to give a shout out to my friends over at the Comics Podcast Network. If you like what I do and you're looking for more comic book related content on the internet, it's a great one-stop shop to go. There are literally hundreds of different podcasts listed there. You can find a single person podcast like myself, roundtable group discussions, to host podcasts. You have a lot of variety. They're also broken up. You can find, podcasts on individual publishers if you prefer one publisher over another. You can find podcasts on individual characters as well. Teams, it's all in what you're into. It's really broken up. It's so much room within comics podcasting on what you can specialize on. Where I'm more of a broad comic book industry kind of topic podcast. You can get some that are more scaled down and specific to a particular topic, character, etc. So definitely, if you have a moment, stop by the Comics Podcast Network and check them out. You can find them over at comicspodcast.com. And I know a lot of us, especially through the Facebook group, plug for the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/the Savant Society. A lot of talk about people being interested or considering becoming a podcaster, comic book podcaster. Also, you can use the Comics Podcast Network as a good resource. They have links where you can contact the admin and see about getting your show added once you get it started to help, kind of grow and build a listener base. That was the real premise behind it when we all came together and to originally form the Comics Podcast Network, was a way that we could all cross-promote one another and help grow our audiences by doing, running promos or talking about each other to kind of open up a platform for all of us to grow and to prosper over this, umbrella of this group. So definitely, if you have a moment, check it out, comicspodcast.com. And now let's jump into this episode. And like I said, I felt this was like a bittersweet thing. I didn't know I was going to feel a certain way that I felt just like in general about the Marvel Netflix shows. I mean, we've had ups and downs, and, I watched them all. I've reviewed them all. I thoroughly overall, for the exception of The Defenders, I felt like was a kind of a disappointment in the first season of Iron Fist were kind of bad. I felt like all of the shows, like when they came back for season 2 of Iron Fist, it really redeemed itself, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. We never got another season of The Defenders. That was, I guess, the first signs that this wasn't going to last too much, too long term. And I have mixed feelings about it because, like I said, all in all, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think the casting across the board was so spot on. I know from the time these shows were canceled, how this Marvel Netflix agreement worked is that I don't think they can even touch these characters for another year and a half, almost 2 years. So I think like the earliest we could probably see these characters in something would be 2021-ish, maybe 2022. I don't know if those same actors, a lot of them have moved, are starting to move on to other projects and different things. But they just were so cast spot on. And I feel bad especially I think about Jessica Jones the most is because, I remember when I did the first season review, I was so against her being cast. Not that I didn't have anything against Kristen Ritter. I actually like her a ton as an actress. I just didn't think she was the character. But again, I was ignorant in my way of thinking because I only knew Jessica Jones post the Alias series that was done by Bendis and was it Bendis and Gatos? I think it was Bendis and Gatos did that, or Bendis and and I'm trying to remember, or it was Lark. I want to say it might have been him and Michael Gatos. Let me look that up because I hate giving out bad information. And I want to say I never read the series. And the craziest thing about it is I bought the omnibus and I had planned to read it because I'm a huge Brian Michael Bendis fan when I still had my physical collection. And I never could... I never got around to reading it because I was reading so much other stuff. And what ended up happening is it became super popular and it was an out of print omnibus. And I bid and I sold it. I ended up selling it for I got it from In Stock Trade. So I got it 50% off. So I paid $50 or $60 for it. Ended up flipping it and selling it for almost $500 at the time because that's how rare it was. And I never read it. And it was sad because now I want to read it. Me watching the show prompted me to really want to go back and read the source material, and I never had it. And now you can go back and get it digitally, which at some point I need to do. Yeah, so I was right. Brian Michael Bendis and Michael Gatos with some work with Bell Sienkiewicz in there mixed in as well, with covers by David Mack. Yep. Okay, wanted to make sure I was crediting, because that's another thing too. You quote something from Brian Michael Bendis. He has worked with so many different artists. You can't just with certain people like Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale. They're synonymous with each other. Brian Michael Bendis, he's literally worked with almost every other artist in the business, so it makes it so hard. So it's kind of crazy that I don't keep up with it. It's hard for anybody to keep up with it. But with that being said, it was this series. I had an attachment. I gained a personal attachment to it because, again, I loved the Jessica Jones character, but all I knew of her, when I was first introduced to the Jessica Jones character, was via Young Avengers. So I knew her post her early career in that whole Alias series. And like I said, that's one thing that's on my to-do list of series I need to finish. To read the original Alias series by Gatos and Brian Michael Bendis. So, I felt like she was the wrong actress to cast in the role. And, over the evolution of the show and and I think she probably, maybe next to Daredevil, she's probably been one of the most viewed characters, I think, just because of her connection to the other series, because we've had her in Jessica Jones season 1, 2, 3. She was in a lot of, she cross-pollinated with, not Iron Fist, but Luke Cage, the first season. Then she was in The Defenders. I'm trying to see did they use her anywhere else outside of that. Maybe that's it. But she's been, she's not just been in her series. And the more I saw her, the more I felt like she got a handle on the character, and the more she developed the character. And it felt like the character I ended up reading coming through all the muck that she had to come through during the series, especially where we leave her at the end of this series, at the very end. And it was really sad. And I've gone through different emotions through the ending of the different series where, with Daredevil, I loved the first season. When we got to the last season of Daredevil, it really, how they ended the season, and I felt like it was a very strong season. I didn't like season 2 as much as other people, but I really enjoyed the final season of it. But it felt like that was the end of the series. How it ended, it was like, oh, okay. We didn't know, I don't think at that point that it was canceled. It came out a few weeks later, but it ended like an ending. So they didn't leave a lot to look forward to in that way of, oh, we're going to get another season. Then it was canceled. Luke Cage season 2 came out. It went in a whole different direction than I ever thought it was going to be, where it left the character at the end of that season. And it really had me excited on where a third season of that would go. And, I heard even as much as writers were already had a writing room going, writing episodes, and were, like deep into, like, they had episodes written. And I think it was something where it was things where they wanted, Netflix didn't want as many episodes or something like that. And it was, it was some fallout with Marvel. Then they just canceled it. And then, Iron Fist came out, extremely redeemed the first season of Iron Fist, and set up so much of the Immortal Iron Fist run by Matt Fraction and Ed Brubaker that really put the character on the map. And, as far as recent years, in the past, 10 to 15 years. And they set up all that stuff, and it was like cliffhanger galore. It was multiple Iron Fists. There was a lot of stuff going on, and it was set up beautifully, and I was so psyched. I mean, they even kind of teased in an episode of they might spin off, and we would have a Daughters of the Dragon with Misty Knight and Colleen Wing, which, like, I was super hype about. It was like everything was set up so perfectly, and it was like, then that got canceled. Then Punisher season 2 came out, and that was really good. And then boom, that got canceled. So it was like a roller coaster, because I think Daredevil seemed the most like, we know this is the end. It ended in a way where it felt like it was closure. With the other shows, there were so many plot threads like left just like open, and it was a shame it never worked out. My hope is for the Disney Plus shows, they're going to have bigger budgets. They're going to, Kevin Feige is overseeing these. These are going to tie in. They're taking characters from the movies, weaving them in, and vice versa. And my biggest problem, because I'm a huge fan of all this, and I watched and I've reviewed, like, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think up until this current season, I've watched every season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. except for the very last one that aired. I think I saw the season premiere, and I didn't watch it. I need to go back and watch it. And I always liked how they did tie-ins or call-outs, and we've seen different characters, especially with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. from the movies, but then they weren't quite connected back into, back into the movies at all. So it was no, connection, even with the Netflix shows. I mean, it was always things mentioned of the event in New York, and even in Iron Fist season 2, they even mentioned Sokovia in the Accords. So it was like a lot of stuff that work was done in those episodes, but they never got love back from Feige and them over at Marvel, Marvel Studios, because the TV branch were separate. So I hate that, because I felt like they had the perfect set of actors. Finn Jones, I don't hate him, but he redeemed himself in the second season of Iron Fist. I think he was probably the only miscast. If I had to keep everybody exactly the same, I would keep everybody exactly the same except for him, and maybe get someone that had more martial arts training. But you could tell from like a few weeks training before the first season of Iron Fist to Defenders to Luke Cage season 2 to Iron Fist season 2, his appearances, he definitely put work in and trained, and he looked a lot better. But I just think for that character, you need someone that's a martial artist that can pull those parts off from the start. And so I feel like he's the only person, if I had to do a do-over again, I would probably cast someone different in the role. Everyone else I would have kept. And it's interesting that what might happen down the road once the rights reverts back. Will we see these actors want to come back and reprise these roles? I hope, like Coulter, Ritter, they will come back, because they were just so great. Like I said, after seeing them over numerous seasons with these longer form stories to tell, they really got a chance to really learn the character and turn in some great performances. So I would like to see it at some point. But again, the focus is on season 3 of Jessica Jones. I went off on a tangent there just talking about that, because like I said, it made me feel a certain kind of way. a certain kind of way about the, it's a sad thing seeing it end with this series, especially. But for the cast for this season, we got Kristen Ritter back as Jessica Jones, Rachel Taylor back as Trish Walker, Carrie Ann Moss as Jerry Hogarth, Rebecca De Mornay as Dorothy Walker, John Amelia as Detective Eddie Costa, Benjamin Walker as Eric Gelden, Jeremy Bobb as Greg Salinger, Tiffany Mack as Zaya Onkonjo, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Anish Seth as Jillian, Sarita Kahudra as Kith Lanine, and Jamie Newman as Brianna Gelden. And the cast, I can't speak highly enough about the cast. They really just have done a great job throughout the 3 seasons, and the mainstays like Kristen Ritter. I mean, Rachel Taylor's transformation throughout the series, like she's really had her own arc intertwined and separate of Jessica Jones with the Trish Walker character. That's just been amazing. I feel like she's probably the least talked about person in the cast that I felt like as the seasons came out that she didn't get a lot of love, but they gave her so much to do in this season and really brought her full circle, and felt like a fully evolved and realized character through the 3 seasons, from where she started to where we see her end when we get to the end of this season. And her relationship with Jessica has been, a roller coaster ride as well, especially coming off the events of season 2 where Trish kills Jessica's mom, and it starts with them having a lot of tension between the two and them kind of finding a way to coexist, though Jessica did have reservations of what, Trish doing that and taking her mom away from her when she just found her, even though she knew her mom was totally crazy and was a serial killer, still the thing of it was her mom. And it, and it goes, and what it made me feel after watching this season was that I felt like, as much as everybody applauded Daredevil, I felt like this show was the heart and soul of the whole Marvel Netflix lineup. Just the things that they dealt with and the issues they tackled. This was a really historical show, groundbreaking show for many reasons. You're having a female lead superhero. Before the movies, it was Jessica Jones. Before it was Wonder Woman, before it was Captain Marvel, it was Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones was one of the first shows to have a whole season where females directed episodes, and that was the second season. That was a first thing. That's historically groundbreaking. Having, they even gender bended the Jerry Hogarth character, which was a male in the comic books, and put Carrie Ann Moss in that role, and then having her be an LGBT character. And really, not being in, and I felt like the great things they did, all the historical groundbreaking things they did for the female empowerment movement before it was a Me Too movement, they were already doing these things with this show. That they showed strong portrayals of women. They dealt with, PTSD from, the very first season, which is which is a hard season to watch because you're dealing with someone that was manipulated by someone. Because the Purple Man had mind control, and the things he did to Jessica made her do to other people, how that affected her, and how she battled through it, through mental health, mental illness. That's a big theme throughout the series. That, like I said, things that you don't think about because they weren't preachy, like punching you in the face, but they were ever present, and they were talked about, and they were talked about with care, and talking about people that have addictions. And, addiction was a big theme throughout, so it was so many good, good positive things that that they dealt with through the 3 seasons of the show that, that I have to say. And again, the whole cast from like top to bottom turned in wonderful performances. Not like they have done that previously, but I guess because we had 2 previous seasons and we had really got to know the character, I felt like the writing on this season was by far the best writing on the show. And I think consistently through seasons, no matter how people might feel about them, I feel like this probably was the best realized series from, season 1, 2 to 3. With the whole cast, not just the lead character, but the whole cast. Maybe Daredevil is right behind in second, and then you might have something like, Luke Cage, because, Misty Knight was such a strong character that started in Luke Cage, went over to Iron Fist, and was even a major part in the Defenders. But I really have to say from beginning to end, how they fleshed out this cast over the 3 seasons, it was always one of the. I feel like it was probably, if I had to rank the shows, I might put this as my top Marvel Netflix show overall for me personally. And I think as good as the show had been the previous 2 seasons, I think by far this is the best written season of the entire series. The core cast of Ritter, Taylor, Moss, and even Rebecca De Mornay just did such great work, and their chemistry playing off one another in their scenes, and even other people were just great. I didn't see the whole death of Rebecca De Mornay coming, her character Dorothy, but when it did, it was so impactful, and it was a character that you loved to hate throughout the series. And after you saw like flashbacks and how she treated Jessica, and even how she treated and exploited Trish, and they even played up even more on that in this season, then seeing her, murdered in such a way that she was so sad. It, made me feel emotion for the character that I never thought I would have, because she was like the character I loved to hate the most. Jeremy Bobb as Greg Salinger, aka Full Killer, was really a revelation. I don't know how they keep doing it. They did a similar, thing with an actor I have never seen before. What was it in Punisher? In Punisher season 2, like with the same actor, and even in Daredevil the last season, the guy that played Bullseye, they just did they picked these great actors to hit these villain roles that are so nuanced and so full body, and again, giving them the canvas of 13 episodes to really develop the villains as much as you're developing and evolving the main characters. And he was the one, through pointer main villain through the whole season, and you just saw the evolution of him throughout, and how smart he was, and how cagey he was, and the trouble he was giving both Jessica and newly powered up Trish was really great. Another thing too, talking about the historic moves they made, is also, like I said, it always was a groundbreaking show, always was big on diversity and equality, and even them going as far as casting a transgender actress in a major supporting role as her secretary. Like I said, I was like, I had to look, I was like, I'm open-minded as anybody, and I was like, okay, is that a guy or a girl? I was like, they were, nice looking, but I was like, I was just like looking, and I had seen a blurb of an article that, they had a transgender actor in the movie, and I didn't know. So I was like trying to figure out who it was. And then I was like, is that the person or not? So then I just happened to, go on IMDb, and I was reading about reading up on it. I was like, oh, okay, that's the kid. Again, it was nothing again hitting you in the face or overly preachy. It just was what it was, and I respect it for being just that. It wasn't like, hey, we got a transgender character right here. Look. She was an actress that played a role. She was the Jillian character, Anish Sieth, and killed it. Was like really powerful in the scenes that she was in, and I was like, again, like we need to see more stuff like this in Hollywood, opening up with diversity. I think it makes a huge difference when you and I don't want to get too personal with this, but, I feel like I'm blessed being in my whole motivation when I originally started doing this podcast was to show people of other races and cultures that, African Americans could talk just as intelligently and be just as passionate as a comic fan as anyone else. It was growing up. It was like, even with my own culture with other black people, like you were severely frowned upon if you liked comic books or if you liked cartoons or if you liked anything of that nature that was geeky and nerdy, like if you weren't even in our, and this is a sad thing, but it's truth. I'm just going to speak truth to you because that's all I've ever tried to do in doing this podcast is speak truth, my truth to you. And hopefully I can help give you some perspective, just like when we talk and we get to know each other through your emails or personal interactions via Facebook, whatever, that you guys open me up to so much stuff. Is that, it's sad and it was sad, like, especially growing up, like if you kind of weren't a dumb jock especially being a black male, you were kind of ostracized because if you didn't like sports too much, like you weren't normal. And it was such a bad thing that for the longest time I hid that. So that was one of the big motivations for me when I first got an iPod and found that comic podcasting was a thing. It was very few people that looked like me and sounded like me doing it. So I wanted to be that for somebody. That's what motivated me. But then it was bigger than that because that was just what the fire that lit me to motivate me to start. Once I started, I realized it was like everything else in my life. It's not always made up to be what it was seeming. It wasn't about to prove a point to anyone about anything. It was about my love and passion for comic books and sharing in with anyone else that was like me. It doesn't have a bearing on your race. It doesn't have a bearing on your sex, your religion, your sexual preference. It's just that if you're a comic fan and you're passionate about comics, that's all that ever mattered. And that's what kept me going and has kept me going for all these years. So that was what sparked me, but it wasn't what motivated me. And, I don't know how many people that look like me that I've motivated to do this. I mean, I've motivated and I've helped a ton of people, but I never distinguish it to be like, yo, how do you look? What color are you? Are you a male? Are you a female? People have emailed me and just said, hey, you've been an inspiration to me. You've helped me, listening to you, over the many years. And I've helped a ton of people that have reached out to me and started shows and that came and went. Some still going, some took a break and came back later on. And, I think it's a strong thing for people to see like people doing the things that they're interested in or that they might like, that they might be hiding because they think how it's perceived by their culture is a bad thing. So seeing people that look like you, talk like you in every aspect of life, it's I feel like it's we all are here together. It's I hate lines and I hate barriers and I test them. Like even how I started the podcast where I used to say comic book savant for the serious comic book fan, that alienated anyone else that maybe just said, today's my first comic. Oh, I can't listen to this show because he is expressively saying this is for a serious comic book fan. Am I a serious comic book fan if I just started today? I might alienate someone from me. You have to change your way of thinking, and that we're all here together. We all have similar likes and interests. So we need to be open, caring, and loving and sharing with one another so people don't feel alienated. That's where things I feel like go wrong in life, when people always feel like they're outcast or they're bullied and they're, that they're pushed around to the side. That all this stuff, crazy stuff that we have going on in the world, that's what fuels it. You know what I mean? So we need more positivity and seeing more diversity across the board in all aspects, not just in TV shows, movies, everything in general. And that's what I hope. No, I'm not going to say hope. I don't hope. I know that's what we promote here in the community via the Savant Society. via what I say here, what I say on the Patreon, what I say on the YouTube channel. It's all about positivity within the hobby that we all know and love, and we're getting to know and love. That's what I'm about. And that's what I love about this series. And I think this is where it resonates with me more so than the other shows, because it did it before it was a trend. It was before it was a hashtag Me Too movement. Before all of that, this show was doing it. And I feel like in a midst of all of that, it hasn't gotten its just due for how historically epic and groundbreaking this show was for a lot of people. But I'm off my soapbox. I'm sorry. I just felt a certain kind of way, and I just had to say it. But like I was saying earlier, and another thing, what I was just saying earlier, like I never think the importance of the show will ever be fully realized by, it being one of the first shows, again, directed by all females, being bold in displaying the LBGT community, mental health communities, addiction issues, the rehab process, a lot of issues that they always dealt with in a positive way without being preachy at all about it. I think that's to be commended, because sometimes you see it and you don't get credit about it, or you see it certain places and like, okay, man, they hit me upside the head with a sledgehammer, with it. And it's like, ugh, okay, we're here. It just felt like it came from a good place, how it was written, how it was acted. They were always sensitive in the material that they were dealing with and the subject matter of said material. Another thing I want to talk about, again, it goes back to what I stated earlier, where I feel like Kristen Ritter, even when she was first cast, I didn't think she was the right actress for it. And you haven't heard anything about her getting credit at all about how well she's done with this character. I think she's a very good actress. Thought more of as a comedic actress, I think, before seeing her in this. And that was one of the things that sorry about that. Alarm went off. One of the things that I think people held against her being more comedic than being able to pull off any drama and emotion. And she's been a revelation this season and throughout the whole series about how good an actress she is. And I hope this leads to more positive things since this whole, ended the way it did, that, she continues and her star keeps growing, because I feel really showed that she has the acting chops to really be a great force in Hollywood going forward, even more of a name she was before she got the show. That I hope people start casting her in movies and put her, in a lot of different roles if she chooses to do that. It's, totally up to her. I guess having seen the series in its complete form at this point, and again, it goes back to me misjudging her. I don't think it's anyone else I could even imagine playing the role of Jessica Jones at this point, after she's really put a huge stamp on it, like kind of how Chris Evans has done for Captain America. She's kind of done for Jessica Jones for me in my mind. It would be hard pressed for me to find, like, if they recast this down the road, which of course they probably will, is not anyone right now I could be like, they would be a perfect replacement for playing this role, the way with the sass, the vulnerability, the emotion, the rough edges that she did. She just encompassed everything that is the character. And again, one last thing I want to say is just like Rachel Taylor, her transformation in this season, like I said, throughout the whole series, it's just been mesmerizing. She really turned it up a notch. Seeing her, really evolve into the Hellcat character. I mean, even as much as, and I love always the Easter eggs they do where, it's like no way her yellow spandex suit would ever work. And, it's the scene where she goes to a costume shop and she picks out an outfit that she thinks she likes, and it's the Hellcat outfit. And I think it's like she's looking in the trunk of her car and she's like, oh, no, this is not going to work. But you see it for that brief second, just like you saw in Luke Cage. You saw season 1. You saw him when he was breaking out of prison. That he had like the tiara with the butterfly yellow collared shirt on for just a brief second. They've done little nods like that throughout the Netflix series, which is really dope, and it was always cool. But she really, I think this was her best turn or performance as Trish Walker, because she's been a likable character, a dislikable character, but they kind of balanced it out, and you kind of see, they did a lot more flashbacks on how she grew up being a child star and being pushed into that by her mom, and being abused by her mom, and different things that shaped her and what influenced her decisions. So you got a lot more understanding of why she made choices she made throughout the series at points. So I really commend, and I hope I really hope, at least if not anyone, Christian Ritter or Rachel Taylor really should be nominated for some award consideration this year for their performances. That's how I felt like how good they were. And I wouldn't hate seeing Jeremy Bob's his great Salinger was just really witty. I really liked it, and I wouldn't be mad if I saw him, get an Emmy nominee for his performance in this season. I felt like they were really top notch, and I thoroughly enjoyed this season. I give this a must watch. I give it a 9.25 out of 10. I know most people have forgotten about these Netflix shows. I even looked on the internet to see it was a lot of reviews when it just kind of came and went. They stopped promoting them after they start canceling them all off. They just kind of dropped them off randomly on the schedule, but it's worth a view. If you're someone that didn't like the previous seasons, then I don't necessarily think you're going to like this more than the other ones. I feel like this is the best season of them all. So if you watch the other 2 seasons, I think you're in for a treat. And if you honestly like the character of Jessica Jones, then you'll enjoy the season. It's a lot of fun going on with a lot of heavy notes. It's a real gets back to the detective roots and really flesh out the characters well, and it just it ended in a good place. It ended in that weird place where it ended in a positive light, where you could be like, okay, we know what she's doing now, where how the show ends, that final shot where her, she was going to leave town, and then she hears the Purple Man's voice, and she turns back around and knows she needs to stay. There's still more work to be done. She needs to be there. She turns around, and she kind of she's staying, she's going to stay. She's defiant to the end. Sets it up where it's a perfect ending in one side, but it could have been a setup of a whole new next season or so of new adventures for her. But it was I feel like the probably most satisfying ending, because Iron Fist left on a total cliffhanger. I can't wait for season 3 of that to come out. We're never going to get it. I felt like this ended at the best spot. I felt like Daredevil ended in a sad spot because I wasn't expecting that ending to feel so definitive, and it felt very definitive, like it came to an end. So it was like total closure. I would have been surprised if all this didn't happen and they announced the season 4 Daredevil. I'd been like, huh? Really? Because it just felt like the end of a show. And like I said, I think Iron Fist and Luke Cage set up so much stuff where it was like, oh, we're clamoring for another season. And Punisher as well. It set up okay, now we got the origin story, we got the completion of his thing with Jigsaw. Now we're gonna get the Frank Castle Punisher like we know from the comics, really straight up, we got through all the setup, the premise, the definition, defining of the character in the world. But now we're about to really go to a bigger world. He's going to expand out of New York, and he might be all over the place, how the Punisher would travel around in his comic in the 90s and the 80s. And it was nope, done. So so it's a mixed bag. And at some point I probably would do a countdown episode where I'll do my final countdown of the Marvel Netflix series, and I'll break down every season of every show and list and rank them and order and run it down for you guys. But that's all I really have for this episode. Like I said, I kind of went long with it because I got on some tangents and got a little bit emotional talking about some stuff there. But it is what it is. You know, you've listened to me long enough. I tend to do that sometimes. But again, I feel like it's definitely worth a watch if you're into the character. If not, it probably, if you don't like it and you've watched stuff before you didn't like it, what I'm saying here might not change your mind that it's going to be any better if you already watched and don't like the character or don't like the series. But if always, check out the Facebook group if you haven't already. Again, facebook.com/groups/the Savant Society, all one word. You go in, you request to join. Once I see your request, I will approve you. You'll get accepted into the group, and we talk and we chat comics, and I talk about stuff that I might do for upcoming episodes. It's just a hub for us to get to know each other and me to throw ideas out at you guys that might be for upcoming episodes. And I get feedback and I ask you guys questions and you ask me questions. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Also, I'm going to announce here, if you want to ask me any questions, you can go to the website at comicbooksavant.com. You can send an email through the website. I have a contact us page. I'm gonna start fielding questions for Ask Comic Book Savant episode 3. So if you have any questions, you can send an email through the website and just do in the subject line Ask Comic Book Savant episode 3. In the subject line, so I know that it's a question for the episode. I'm going to start getting those together so I can do the next round for a new episode of that as well. Also, if you like what I do here and you like to support the show, I have a Patreon campaign. You can find it at patreon.com/Comic Book Savant. I have different tiers, but for the low amount of $1, you can, contribute $1 a month. You get a whole nother feed, the Comic Book Savant Extra podcast feed. I do a whole nother weekly podcast exclusively for the Patreon supporters. So you, instead of getting 4 episodes a month, you get 8. You get all the Comic Book Savants you need and more. Also, if you can't afford to do that, I know everyone can't contribute. You always can, retweeting, subscribing to the Facebook group, or joining the Facebook group, or subscribing to the YouTube channel. I'm still trying to grow, trying to get to that 1,000. It might be hard pressed to do it at this point, but I'm still trying to get to 1,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. I'm like at 420, 430 mark at this point. So I still got a long ways to go before the end of the year, and I'm going to try to keep pushing, but I need your guys' help. So if you haven't already, go over to youtube.com /Comic Book Savant. That's a YouTube channel. If you haven't, subscribe, check it out. New content comes out there pretty much every week. I've been recouping here, so I took a little bit of a break, but I'm on and in the process of recording some new episodes for the YouTube channel. But I think at this point I have about 140 so odd videos. So if you haven't been there, it's a lot of content, comic reviews, some TV reviews, non-spoiler movie reviews. I have a comic book collector's guide series. So if you're into collecting, comics, or just getting into the hobby, or even if you've been a long time collector of, comics, it's just tips, tricks, that's stuff that I've learned from people over the years, and just putting it back out and just breaking things down. It's been one of the most popular series on the YouTube channel. And also we had the Fundamental List, which as a fellow Patreon supporter plus Savant Society member, Chris Rivers, came to me and emailed me and he literally gave me this idea. He was like, I like your recommended read episodes you do on YouTube, but why don't you do something that's a little bit more in depth? And I took everything he said under consideration. Me and him went back and forth, and he helped me literally come up with the whole concept for this new series, which is the Fundamental List. It's 2 episodes out already, and probably by the time you hear this, a 3rd one probably will be out as well. So definitely check that out as well. But that's all I have for you guys this week. This is your host, James Harris, and this is the Comic Book Savant podcast. So until we talk again, you guys stay safe, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.